Before I lose you, let me ask this. Will you marry me? I'm not standing here with perfect words or rehearsed promises. I'm standing here with everything real I have, with a heart that's been through silence, distance, and doubt, and still chose you. Some moments don't ask for speeches, they ask for courage. And this is one of those moments. Life doesn't always give us signs or second chances. Sometimes it just gives us a person who feels like home in a world that never stops moving. You became that place for me, calm in my chaos, truth in my uncertainty. Before time changes things, before fear speaks louder than love, I need you to know this isn't a question born from pressure, it's a question born from certainty. So before I lose you to time, to what ifs, or to silence, let me ask you the most honest question I'll ever ask. I never believed love had a sound until I met you. Not music, not words, but something quieter, something that stayed when everything else left. You entered my life without announcement, without demand, and somehow changed the shape of every day that followed. I didn't notice it all at once. It happened slowly, in the way my thoughts began to return to you when the world felt heavy, in the way silence stopped feeling empty because your presence existed even when you weren't there. Love didn't arrive like a moment. It arrived like time choosing a direction. I've spent most of my life learning how to stand alone, learning how to survive without leaning too much, without expecting too much, without asking for more than what was given. Somewhere along that path, I learned how to be strong by myself. But strength has a strange way of revealing its limits, because there comes a point when being alone stops feeling like independence and starts feeling like distance. And then you appeared, not to save me, not to fix me, but to sit beside me in the quiet and make it feel human again. I didn't fall for you in a dramatic way. There was no single second I could point to and say that's when it happened. It was in the accumulation of moments, in the way you listened when I spoke without polishing my words, in the way you spoke when you didn't have to prove anything, in the way you stayed the same whether the world was kind or cruel. Love grew there, in the ordinary, in the unnoticed, in the parts of life people usually rush past. I started recognizing you in my future before I ever spoke your name out loud, in plans I didn't realize I was making, in thoughts that assumed your presence without permission. I imagined mornings without knowing why they felt incomplete, until I understood you were missing from them. I imagined distance and felt the weight of it before it ever happened. That's when I understood something important. That love isn't just wanting someone close, it's feeling undone by the idea of losing them. There's a quiet fear that comes with loving someone deeply, not the fear of pain, but the fear of timing, of waiting too long, of believing there will always be another moment to speak when sometimes there isn't. I've seen how life moves, how it doesn't pause for certainty, how it doesn't wait for us to be ready. I've watched people assume permanence and lose it in a second. That understanding changes you. It teaches you that some questions don't belong to tomorrow. I don't want to be the person who realizes too late that silence was a decision, that not asking was an answer in itself, because loving you has shown me something rare, that some connections don't ask to be tested, they ask to be honored. And honoring something like this means standing in front of uncertainty and choosing it anyway. You don't owe me perfection. I'm not asking for a flawless future or an easy road. I know who I am. I know my shadows, my pauses, my unspoken weight. I know love isn't about becoming someone else, but about choosing to remain when things get difficult. What I see in you isn't an escape from life. It's a reason to face it honestly. I've learned that love doesn't shout, it doesn't chase attention, it waits patiently, hoping you'll notice it's been there all along. And now that I have noticed, I can't pretend it doesn't matter. I can't carry this feeling quietly and call it patience when it's really fear wearing a calm face. If there's one thing I'm certain of, it's this: you change the way time feels to me. Days with you don't disappear, they stay. They leave marks. The thought of a future without you doesn't feel empty, it feels wrong. Not tragic, just misaligned, like a story missing its meaning. Before distance becomes memory, before hesitation becomes regret, before I lose the chance to be honest in the only way that matters. I need to ask you something, not because I have all the answers, but because I'm willing to build them with you. Not because I'm fearless, but because loving you has made fear less powerful than staying silent. Not because I know what forever looks like, but because I know who I want to look at while finding out. I won't pretend I'm fearless. I've never been. I've always been aware of how easily things can slip away, how quickly something real can become a memory if you hesitate too long. I've seen what happens when people wait for the perfect moment, when they convince themselves that certainty will arrive one day and make the choice easier. Most of the time, it doesn't. Most of the time, all that arrives is distance and the quiet realization that love doesn't disappear loudly. It fades while you're still deciding. There's a strange tension between holding on and letting go, between wanting to protect something and risking everything for it. Loving you placed me right in the center of that tension, because the closer you became, the more I understood what was at stake. You weren't just someone I cared about, you became someone I could lose, and that awareness changes the way you breathe, the way you think, the way you move through time. I've asked myself every difficult question. What if I'm not enough? What if I fail? What if I promise something I can't fully control? What if love changes? What if time tests us in ways we don't expect? Those questions don't come from doubt in you. They come from respect. Because when something matters this much, you don't step into it lightly. You hesitate, not because you're unsure of the feeling, but because you understand the weight of the decision. But fear has a way of disguising itself as patience. It tells you that waiting is wisdom, that silence is safety, that distance is control. And for a while I listened. I told myself there was time, that moments repeat, that chances circle back, until I realized something honest and uncomfortable, that fear was slowly asking me to accept a future where you might not be there. And that future felt heavier than any risk I could imagine taking. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's deciding that something else matters more. And loving you taught me what that something is. It's waking up knowing I chose truth over comfort. It's standing in uncertainty without needing guarantees. It's understanding that commitment doesn't mean knowing everything. It means being willing to face whatever comes together. I don't want to look back one day and recognize my own hesitation as the moment everything changed. I don't want to remember you as someone I almost chose. Almost is a quiet kind of regret. It doesn't scream, it just stays. And I've lived long enough to know that the things we don't say follow us longer than the things we risk saying out loud. There's a difference between losing something and letting it slip away. Losing implies helplessness. Letting it slip away means there was a moment where action was possible. I don't want that kind of loss. I don't want to tell myself stories about timing or circumstance when the truth is simpler, that I was afraid to step forward when it mattered. You deserve honesty, not hesitation disguised as caution. You deserve a choice that's made with intention, not convenience. And I can't claim to care about you while standing still, hoping the future decides for me. Love doesn't work that way. It asks something of us. It asks us to be present, to be vulnerable, to be brave in a way that doesn't feel heroic, just necessary. I've learned that commitment isn't about control. It's about trust. Trusting that even when things are uncertain, the decision to stay is stronger than the fear of change. Trusting that growth doesn't come from avoiding risk, but from choosing meaning over safety. And what I feel with you has meaning. Not the kind that fades when things get difficult, but the kind that deepens. So this isn't me standing on solid ground with every answer in hand. This is me standing exactly where I am, aware, imperfect, honest, choosing not to let fear decide my future, choosing not to let silence speak for me, choosing not to lose you simply because I was afraid to ask for forever. I didn't plan a future with you. It happened without asking permission. Somewhere between ordinary conversations and shared silences, my mind began placing you ahead of me in time, not as a fantasy, not as an escape, but as a constant. You were there in the way tomorrow felt less uncertain, in the way choices started to carry weight because they no longer belonged to me alone. I noticed it when decisions stopped being about what I wanted and quietly became about what would last. I used to think the future was something distant, something abstract, a collection of days I would deal with when they arrived. But loving you changed that. The future stopped being a vague idea and started becoming specific. It had your presence in it, your voice shaping the quiet, your absence feeling impossible. That's how I knew this wasn't temporary. Because temporary things don't claim space in tomorrow. They live only in the moment. You didn't. I see you in places we haven't been yet, in mornings that don't rush, in nights that don't feel empty, in routines that don't feel like repetition because they're shared. I don't imagine perfection, I imagine reality. I imagine disagreements that don't threaten everything, silence that doesn't need fixing, growth that doesn't require distance. I imagine choosing each other even when the feeling isn't loud, even when love becomes something quieter and deeper. There's a difference between wanting someone and recognizing them. Want can fade, recognition stays. With you, I didn't just feel attraction or comfort, I felt alignment, like pieces of myself I didn't know were waiting finally found where they belong. You didn't complete me, you didn't fill a void. You stood beside me and somehow made the road ahead clearer. I think people misunderstand what it means to see a future in one person. They think it's about dependency or surrender. It isn't. It's about clarity. It's about knowing that out of all the possible directions life could take, there is one path where things make more sense, one path where effort feels meaningful, one path where commitment doesn't feel like sacrifice, but like focus. I don't want a life full of endless possibilities if none of them include depth. I don't want freedom that costs connection. I don't want to keep every door open if it means never fully walking through one. Choosing you doesn't close my world, it gives it shape, it gives it intention, it gives it a center. When I picture the years ahead, I don't see grand moments, I see accumulation. Shared time stacking quietly, trust built without announcements, love evolving from intensity into something steady. I see challenges that don't break us because we face them together instead of alone. I see growth that doesn't pull us apart, but stretches us forward. You're not someone I imagine loving only when things are easy. You're someone I imagine standing beside when things are uncertain, when plans change, when life doesn't follow the outline we expected, because the future isn't about control, it's about companionship. And with you, the idea of facing the unknown feels less like risk and more like purpose. I've met people who made me feel alive for a moment. I've known connections that burned bright and disappeared. This is different. This doesn't rush. This stays. This feels like something that can hold weight without collapsing. Something that doesn't need constant reassurance to exist. Seeing a future in you isn't about certainty that nothing will go wrong. It's about certainty that when something does, I don't want to face it without you. It's about knowing that the idea of building something lasting feels more important than preserving comfort. It's about understanding that love isn't measured by intensity alone, but by endurance. I don't want to look ahead and wonder who might be there with me. I already know who I want it to be, not because you promise me happiness every day, but because you make honesty possible every day, because you allow me to be present, not performative. Because with you, the idea of forever doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels grounded. The future doesn't scare me when I imagine you in it. It feels quieter, more deliberate, less chaotic, like a place where I don't have to search for meaning because meaning is already there, waiting in shared time, shared effort, shared becoming. Don't have a map for forever. I don't know exactly what it looks like or how it unfolds. I know there will be moments I can't predict, days that don't go as planned, versions of ourselves we haven't met yet. I know time changes people, and love doesn't stay frozen in the shape it begins with. But faith was never about certainty. It was always about choosing something even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Asking for forever isn't a promise that nothing will ever go wrong. It's a promise that when things do, we won't pretend they don't matter. It's the decision to stay present when leaving would be easier, to speak when silence would protect us, to listen when pride tells us not to. Faith doesn't ignore reality, it meets it head on and chooses to believe anyway. I'm not asking you to step into a perfect life with me. I'm asking you to step into a real one where we learn each other slowly and sometimes painfully, one where love isn't always loud but it's honest, one where commitment doesn't mean control but care, where forever isn't a guarantee but a direction we agree to walk toward together. There's vulnerability in asking a question like this, because once it's spoken, there's no pretending it didn't matter. Once you ask, you're exposed. You accept that the answer could change everything. But that risk is part of the truth, and love without truth doesn't last. I'd rather stand here open than spend a lifetime wondering what might have been if I'd been brave enough to ask. Faith isn't blind optimism. It's awareness paired with hope. It's knowing that people grow, that feelings evolve, that life tests even the strongest bonds, and still choosing to believe that what we're building is worth the effort it will require. I don't believe in effortless forever. I believe in intentional forever, in choosing each other not once, but repeatedly, especially when it's inconvenient. I'm not asking you to be certain. I'm asking you to be willing, willing to grow with me instead of away from me, willing to face change without running from it, willing to let love deepen into something quieter and stronger than passion alone, willing to trust that what we're creating has space to evolve without losing its meaning. There's humility in asking this question because it admits that I don't control the future, that I can't promise perfection, that I don't have the power to protect us from every storm. All I can offer is presence, effort, honesty, a commitment to keep showing up even when the path gets unclear. I'm choosing faith over fear right now. Faith that what we share isn't fragile. Faith that it can hold weight. Faith that even when we don't recognize ourselves for a moment, we'll still recognize each other. Faith that love doesn't need guarantees to be real, it needs intention. This question isn't about pressure, it's about alignment, about acknowledging what already exists and deciding whether we're willing to honor it with action. It's about stepping forward instead of standing still, about choosing to build instead of waiting to see what happens. And if forever means anything to me, it means this: waking up each day knowing the choice was mutual, knowing that even when things feel uncertain, the direction is shared, knowing that love isn't something we hope survives time, but something we actively carry through it. So I'm asking you this not because I know exactly how the story ends, but because I know how I want to keep telling it. Not because I'm sure of every chapter, but because I'm sure of the person I want beside me while we write them. Not because faith removes doubt, but because love makes doubt worth facing. Love for me has never been about grand declarations or flawless timing. It has always been about presence, about staying when it would be easier to retreat into comfort, about choosing one person again and again, even as both of us change in ways we can't fully predict. What I feel with you isn't built on illusion, it's built on awareness, on seeing you clearly and still wanting to remain. I don't expect us to always understand each other perfectly. There will be moments where words fall short, where silence feels heavy, where distance isn't physical but emotional. That's part of being human. What matters to me is not avoiding those moments, but facing them honestly. Love doesn't disappear because things become difficult. It disappears when we stop showing up for the difficulty. I've learned that commitment isn't about losing yourself. It's about bringing your whole self forward without hiding. It's about allowing someone to see the unfinished parts, the doubts, the parts still learning how to stand. With you, I don't feel the need to perform strength. I feel allowed to be real. And that kind of safety is rare. Time has a way of revealing what matters. It strips away distractions and leaves only what holds weight. What we share has endured quiet days and uncertain ones. It hasn't needed constant excitement to survive. It's grown through consistency, through trust built slowly, without shortcuts. That's how I know this isn't fleeting. I don't believe love is something we find once and then keep without effort. I believe it's something we choose daily, in small decisions, in patience, in forgiveness, in the willingness to listen even when we'd rather defend ourselves. What I want with you isn't a promise that never bends, it's a promise that doesn't break when it bends. I'm aware that forever isn't guaranteed by words alone. It's shaped by actions that repeat long after the moment has passed, by how we treat each other when no one else is watching, by how we protect what we're building instead of taking it for granted. That's the kind of forever I'm willing to work for. There's a quiet courage in committing to one path when so many others exist, in choosing depth over variety, in choosing meaning over convenience, in choosing to invest rather than keep your options open. With you, that choice doesn't feel limiting. It feels clarifying, like knowing where to place my energy instead of scattering it. I don't need us to be extraordinary to be lasting. I need us to be honest, to keep returning to each other even when life pulls us in different directions. To remember that love isn't sustained by intensity alone, but by intention. And my intention is clear. If the future asks things of us we aren't prepared for yet, I want to face that learning beside you. If growth demands patience, I want to practice it with you. If love changes its shape, I want to recognize it with you, rather than searching for it somewhere else. What I'm offering isn't certainty, it's commitment, not control but care, not perfection but presence. I'm offering a choice that doesn't rely on guarantees, only on willingness, willingness to stay, to grow, to choose each other even when the answer isn't obvious. I don't know what every year will bring. I don't know how life will test us, but I know this. Walking forward without you feels less honest than facing uncertainty with you. And that truth matters more to me than fear, hesitation, or the comfort of remaining undecided.